Under a clear blue sky filled with bright white clouds, the silhouette of a dragon soared into view that day. The ferocious green dragon opened its massive jaws and let out a thunderous roar. A dragon circled endlessly in the sky, flying wildly across the vast expanse, freer than anything I've ever witnessed. That dragon flew right overhead of man, standing below, and just because of that I asked his face was covered in blood, looking utterly exhausted. High above in the wide sky, the dragon spread its wings and flew far away as Asta watched it go. The great magic clan Declan had decided to withdraw from the role of trouble cleaner. Then he clenched his fist tightly under the sunlight, and that was the only reason. Dark clouds gradually rolled in, blotting out the white clouds from before. A black crow opened its beak and cawed loudly. Suddenly, a powerful voice rang out. "Now you're the last one left." Then it flapped its wings and flew off to join the rest of the flock. Down below, Asta was using magic to choke someone by the neck. A green-haired man in helpless agony gasped out, "First of all, you've been hiding your true strength." He just gave a faint smile. "That's not power an ordinary cleaner would have." Then he declared firmly, "The one asking questions here is me." Asta held the book in his hand and asked, "This is a grimoire, isn't it?" The green-haired man's face paled in pain as he stammered, "Yes," in the vast, empty space around them. Only the two of them remained as the green-haired man continued. "You really think we came here just to take down one hunting dog?" Asta had no intention of letting go and replied, "But if it's trash from the Declan clan like you, then maybe the whole pack showed up." He glanced at the other man and asked casually, "So how do you use it?" The man stubbornly refused, "I don't know." Hearing that, Asta shifted his gaze and thought, if that greedy Declan guy knew, he wouldn't have buried it in that dusty basement. He looked at the book in his hand and pondered deeply. He doesn't even know how to use it, yet he was still hunted down like this. Right after that, Asta concluded, that just proves how valuable it really is. Suddenly, the green-haired man spoke up, making Asta's glance over, hand over the grimoire. Even in his disadvantaged position, he still tried to threaten. "Then I'll ask the leader to spare you, maybe even let you go back to being a cleaner." Asta wasn't afraid at all and just gave a slight smirk. He kept the magic grip tight on the green-haired man's neck. "What right do you have to say that?" Asta threatened right back. "Fine then. Any last words?" The man groaned in increasing pain. "You damn bastard." Asta shot back mockingly. "Oh, finally accepting yourself, huh? Good for you." Suddenly, a footstep with a cane approached slowly, making Asta startle instinctively. Then he turned to look. "This is dangerous." A man appeared surrounded by red, glowing auras. "You have pretty good instincts." Asta fully turned around and muttered to himself, "Anyone carrying killing intent like that?" The man gripped his staff tightly. "A pleasure. I am Farin von Declan." He introduced himself calmly, clan leader of the Declan magic family, Eastern Continent. Hearing that, Asta was shocked. The clan leader of Declan. Farron smiled lightly and made an offer. "If you don't mind, I'd like to take back that grimoire. We can talk afterward." He glared at Farron and thought, "It's been over 10 years since I started as a cleaner. I've spent half my life dealing with Declan, but this is the first time I've met the clan leader face to face." Asta recalled those people. Declan clan, the most powerful magic family on the Eastern Continent. The majestic image of Farron appeared in his mind along with the thought. The clan leader, said to be the strongest mage in their history. He wondered curiously, what kind of person is he? But in reality, the man wore an incredibly kind smile. Seeing that, Asta was stunned. What a hassle. Farron looked helpless at his blank face and fell silent. Immediately, Asta held up the book and asked, "You're just going to take someone else's spoils that easily? No shame at all." He didn't answer and just burst out laughing. And so the two stood facing each other, both laughing in their own ways. Asta laughed awkwardly and blamed himself. "I shouldn't have eaten that dragon." The clan leader himself showing up, way too unlucky. His hand trembled. This magic power isn't a joke. He's the most overwhelming mage I've ever seen. Farron slammed his staff hard into the ground, shattering the stone. "It'd be easier if I just killed you and took the grimoire back, but fine. I'll be direct," he said menacingly. "Return under Declan's wing, hand over the grimoire, and I'll overlook everything you've done." Asta stayed silent while Farron pressed on. "What? Your talent is truly impressive. Watching you fight, I can't believe we didn't notice sooner. Just a filthy stray from the gray zone, training with the trash techniques cleaners usually use." He stood there staring as Farron tempted him. "Yet you've reached this level of strength. If you had the Declan clan backing you, how high could you soar?" Asta's eyes nearly drooped in boredom. "And how far could Declan reach with you as their sword?" He kept painting an advantageous future for Asta. "Together, you'd stand by my side, making Declan even greater. You'd be etched into history." In the gray sky, a dragon spread its wings and flew back toward Declan. Farron sealed it. Of course, you'd still have to return the grimoire. Asta replied shortly, fine. Farron smiled happily. Good, then let's start with, but first, I have one condition. Asta grinned wickedly and looked at Farron mockingly. Give me the position of leader, and I'll think about it. He smiled, too, but veins bulged clearly on his face. Asta clenched his fist, making green light burst out, and asked, You've been watching the fight, haven't you? Above, the green-haired man hung with his tongue lolling out from the tight chokehold. His neck twisted to the side as Asta confidently continued. Did you count how many people died because of this thing? That action successfully enraged Farron, making his face twist in fury. But he stayed calm. So that's how it's going to be. You could die here, you know. Hearing those words, worry clearly showed on Asta's face. He stood silent and thought, he's right. Suddenly, footsteps ran quickly across the ground. Asta leaped high, raising his fist triumphantly. Exactly. Two beams of white and red light collided violently between them. Asta's face turned ferocious as he roared. You won't know who's longer until you measure it. Farin replied calmly. Fine. Looks like I need to show you your place. He pointed at the red circle in front of him, preparing something. Farron stood below as Asta unleashed his attack on him. He held his hand over the circle with an utterly nonchalant expression. It seemed Asta had been hit by the technique, his face changing color. This crazy bastard. From high up, Asta fell quickly to the ground, scraping his feet to slow the impact. While fighting, he pondered. So this is the Declan clan leader. Asta charged forward, but still glanced back warily. Not a single gap in his defense. Suddenly, a voice rang out. Lost focus, huh? Then he blocked the light coming from ahead. Farron asked casually, Didn't you say you have to measure to know? Some things you just know without measuring. Asta stood there, touching the red circle, and looked up. Farron declared gravely, Like the distance between you and me. A golden light suddenly burst out, blinding the area. A massive red circle surrounded and protected Farron as he spoke. I won't kill you, just beat you black and blue. So ready to talk now. Farron looked up at the gray sky. He suddenly laughed. And what if I bow my head now? What if I agree to return under Declan's shadow? You think I'd believe you? On this side, Asta was focusing his magic. His blood-covered face looked terrifying as he opened his eyes wide. You think I believe you? Instantly, he unleashed his attack and shouted, I'm sick of eating dog food. Got that? Asta's technique slammed down hard toward where Farron stood. His face twisted viciously as he yelled. Who wants to go back to being a dog? Just because of a shiny leash and a big house doesn't mean it's not a kennel. Farron calmly tapped his staff on the ground and sneered, How pathetic. Right after, a red circle quickly appeared under his feet. The light from that circle burst out and hurled Asta flying far away. Farron raised his hand to control the red circle and looked up. Let me show you. He spoke as if preparing a fatal blow. This is what overwhelming power looks like. At this point, Asta knelt looking up and cursed. You bastard. Above in the sky, purple lightning struck down from somewhere. Thinking back, that's the reason. Asta recalled his own pathetic face from back then. That day, when I looked up at the sky. In the gray sky, a dragon took flight, soaring freely overhead. The image of his pained self appeared. And then, the reason I looked up that day. Farron still stood there leaning on his staff. Impressive. I thought you were dead. You actually held on. Then he asked mockingly, So have you felt the difference in strength yet? Asta's face, full of blood, stared at Farron without a word. Finally, he admitted, You're too strong. Farron stopped and asked, Want to finish what you started? Ready to talk now. Asta, covered in wounds, narrowed his cold eyes and asked back, So you want me to go back to being a cleaner? Farron touched his chin thoughtfully. Oh, I never said that. I didn't tell you to be a cleaner. Immediately, Farron made his demand. I want you to become the leader of Bongshin. Hearing that, Asta's eyes widened in disbelief. Leader of Bongshin. Fahanes Ohasyoji. Declan clan, the most powerful magic family on the eastern continent. Strong enough to challenge the throne. And they want me to swear loyalty as a vassal family. Asta slowly pulled out the book and asked, That was your real goal from the start, wasn't it? But Farron brushed it off. You're still underestimating your own value. I want you in that grimoire too. And so the two just stared at each other in silence. Asta held the book toward Farron. Good, you made the right choice. He smiled and reached out to take it. All your sins are forgiven. Farron shifted to a firm tone. Now only glory awaits, standing beside Declan. Suddenly, purple light appeared from the book in Asta's hand. Farron's face darkened. What are you doing? Asta glared at him and shot back. What do you think? You said I could hand it over to you, as long as I didn't mind it burning to ashes, right? Farron was so furious that veins bulged on his face. You'll never get an easy death. But Asta cut him off sharply. Ah, shut up and listen. Holding the book now enveloped in purple light, he spoke calmly. I've never done this kind of work for money. Cleaners don't make any money, anyway. So why did I keep this thing? Because it's tied to money. Asta continued asking, making Farron's eyes widen in shock. Have you ever heard of a cleaner getting eaten alive by a Declan young master? He seemed to know about it. Forbidden magic. Asta confirmed firmly. That's right, that bastard swallowed my teammate whole, and Declan covered it all up. As if piecing it together, Farron continued. So this is all for revenge. Asta replied wearily. Why would I bother with that? I know exactly how cheap a cleaner's life is. My teammate knew it too. He looked straight with his sharp green eyes and stammered. Just under the gray sky, warm rays of sunlight began to peek through. Wanted to make sure they get what they wished for. Then Asta smiled, but that requires a lot of money and more than that. Finally, he concluded, I've decided to retire for good. No way in hell am I going back to that kennel ever again. Farron stayed silent, waiting for Asta to continue. Consider this my final will and testament. Then he snapped his fingers once. A blue flame immediately flew over and enveloped Asta as Farron turned away and said, This is Declan's precious azure flame, the flame that never extinguishes. Farron glanced back. Burn in there and regret your choice down to your very marrow. Asta stared defiantly and declared, Regret? Screw that. Farron's back gradually faded into the distance as Asta thought, if the only choice left is to be Declan's dog, I'd rather go back to the gray zone, even if I can't. Dying isn't so bad. Asta sat inside the flames with a contented smile. He burst into loud, joyful laughter. How long has it been since I felt this free? Then he sighed regretfully, too bad I can't escape my fate. Immersed in the fire, he kept thinking, it's a shame I can't escape my fate, but I don't regret it. If I'm reborn, I'll chase freedom properly and take revenge the right way. All rivers flow to the sea. But strangely, Asta seemed completely unharmed. What the hell? He recalled Farron's retreating figure and wondered. Everything stopped. Asta hid behind a rock and peeked out. He held the book in his hand, the grimoire. Then Asta let go, allowing the blue flames to engulf the book. He watched in utter shock. What the hell is this? A golden circle quickly appeared. Asta still didn't understand what was happening. What in the world is going on here? A coin dropped into an old, battered bucket. In the form of a young boy, Asta dragged the bucket along begging for money. He froze, stunned, and asked himself, what is this? I was clearly being burned alive. Something felt wrong. Asta panicked and slowly lifted his face. Looking at the rundown houses around him, his heart filled with questions. Where's this? But then he looked down at the bucket with a few stray coins and thought, it's like I've gone back to the past. This place feels way too familiar. Suddenly, Asta exclaimed as realization dawned. That's right, I remember now. This was the gray zone, the place where he once scraped by day after day before becoming a cleaner. People bustled around, no one paying attention to him. Asta looked down at his own hands, still in disbelief at the miracle. No way, I've really gone back in time. The sky was clear and blue, sunlight gentle. The rundown houses in the gray zone gradually fell quiet. Asta collapsed by the riverbank, stunned, and asked, what the hell just happened? Seeing his own face reflected in the water, though he showed no expression, his heart was in turmoil. He muttered to himself, this is definitely me, but me when I was a kid. Suddenly, a magic circle faintly appeared on his chest. Asta felt dazed and thought, if there's anything confusing me, it's this mark. I went back to the past, but this thing stayed with me. Sitting on the lush green grass under the blazing sun, he pondered for a while and vaguely concluded, I don't know how, but the grimoire definitely did something. Still remembering the book's appearance, he felt a twinge of doubt. Does it really have that kind of power? But thinking back, the lazy old Declan clan leader personally showing up proves just how important that grimoire was. And precisely because it was so important, no one knew anything about it. Finally, he brushed aside the tangled thoughts and told himself, whatever, it seems like a good thing anyway. It's too real to be a dream, so I don't believe this is one. Thinking that, he looked at the water in front of him and sighed inwardly. That sewer stench from Sales Lecture Hall is so real, it's nauseating. I'm definitely still alive. But he waved his arm experimentally and thought vaguely, and not just alive. Snapping out of his thoughts, Asta clenched his fist energetically, pumping himself up. A morning full of vitality and burning ambition. This is the kind of situation where anything can succeed. But he still wondered to himself in confusion. So, what exactly counts as success? Under the harsh sunlight, he closed his eyes slightly and whispered, I once had a dream. Yes, I had a dream. It was also my teammate's dream. Asta let his mind drift, recalling old memories. Back then, He and his teammate gazed off into the distant horizon. The reason I decided to retire, Asta suddenly turned and called out. Number one, I mean Aster. Aster didn't turn to look at him, but asked quietly, we were born as strays in the gray zone. We had nothing, no good food, no nice clothes, no education. Among those, which do you think hurts the most? Asta asked back, not getting to eat? Aster didn't repeat it and continued. If it was just hunger, we wouldn't have ended up like this. Starving, we just endure. Then he asked again, but what do you think dragged our lives down into this sewer? Unlike Aster's somber mood, he kept messing around playfully and answered casually, but I'm fine with it. Aster, annoyed, still continued seriously, the reason our lives fell to the bottom, but Asta cut him off flatly. I said I'm fine with it. Aster reached peak irritation and shot him a friendly glare. Seeing that, he stopped teasing and gave up helplessly. All right, I'll say it. Look at that glare. Only then did he listen seriously as Aster spoke. Not getting an education, that's the most bitter part. If we'd been taught properly, we wouldn't have had to live like this, getting trampled by those damn nobles. Both gazed at the distant sunset horizon as Aster continued. So, if one day I get to retire, then I want he unconsciously broke into a bright smile. Back in the present, Asta finished for him with a smile, build a library. He vaguely pictured it, a place where anyone, rich or poor, high status or low, male or female, could read freely. But I want to go one step further. Thinking that, he raised his hand toward the blue sky. Dreaming again, build a tower for no reason at all, just because I like tall things. Put it anywhere. Asta couldn't help whispering aloud. Any book is fine, but there's one that absolutely has to be there. The more he thought, the more excited he got, laughing maniacally and shouting in delight. I'll put Declan's top secret manual right in the entrance hall on the first floor, so even gray zone strays, noble bastards, or butcher kids can grab a copy. The cover will have Declan's emblem, and inside will be the secret arts they value more than their lives. The more he imagined, the grander his visions grew. Pictured everyone holding that book hand in hand. He couldn't help exclaiming, just imagining it makes me drool. But there's still one big problem. How the hell do I get that book? The blue sky grew even bluer. He crossed his arms, nodding cheerfully and muttering happily, well, that's future me's problem. Anyway, if I spread Declan's secret manual everywhere, they'll love it to death. Suddenly, a foot slammed straight into his face with a shout. It's you. Asta was kicked flat on the ground. The boy kept yelling, you bastard, I've been looking for you. I saved you a spot and you dare hide here? You want to die, huh? As he spat venomous words, he punched and kicked Asta relentlessly. Asta, bruised all over and clueless about what was happening, tried to cover his head and thought, who the hell is this guy? An ambush. But I've survived countless battles, except aerial fights. I'm a veteran cleaner. Thinking that, he boldly grabbed the foot kicking him and stopped it. The boy was stunned by the move, but quickly recovered and shouted, oh, you dare block my hit? Asta's cold voice slowly pronounced each word. You hit me 7 times. Then eat 70 in return. His face turned icy, radiating killing intent. That made the boy instinctively flinch in fear. Seizing the moment, he prepared to slam a fist straight into the boy's face, but his hand made a cracking sound. He pulled back his fist, bewildered, and asked himself, what the hell, it's glowing. While he was distracted, the boy threw a punch straight into his face and cursed loudly, you bastard, you dare hit this big bro. A punk like you dares touch me? You crazy, huh? He kept cursing without mercy, pummeling Asta until he rolled on the ground. Asta couldn't fight back and could only cover his head as tears streamed down. Helplessly, he thought, it hurts. It hurts so much I'm crying. But what hurts more than my body is my heart. The boy accidentally tripped over a rock on the ground. He fell backward with a thud. Splashing into the water, Asta saw it and told himself, now's my chance. The boy got up and cursed it again, you little brat. Seeing Asta run, he roared in anger. Where do you think you're going? Asta suddenly shouted back, this isn't running away. Unexpectedly, he turned to look at the boy and said coldly, I'll remember your face. In his mind, he calculated, this is a tactical retreat. Those hits you landed on me, I'll wear them on my chest like medals. I'm a veteran cleaner, one who never gives up. At a street corner, Asta examined his hand and muttered quietly, damn it, this isn't good. Looking at his bruised, swollen wrist, he worried and grumbled, I'm not some ordinary office worker, yet a few punches dislocated my wrist. This body is way too weak. Shaking off the wild fantasies in his head, he thought, forget the tower for now. First, I need to fix this body. At that moment, a voice called out to Asta, you hungry? A boy approached beside him. While rubbing his wrist, Asta looked at him and asked back, do you know me? Damianan Serdanistli. No. Asta turned away, glanced him over once, and inwardly assessed, yeah, figured as much. You look pathetic, but your clothes are expensive. Probably some noble kid kicked out of the family during a power struggle. In other words, a walking bomb, beautiful and dangerous. Damien stood still, quietly watching him. Asta called out shortly, "Hey kid." Damien pointed to himself and introduced, "I'm Damien." Asta started to continue anyway, but was cut off as the boy said, "My mom is Bianca." Hearing that, Asta froze, speechless. Inwardly annoyed, he thought, why do I suddenly feel like I'm hearing things I shouldn't know? After a few seconds of silence, Asta couldn't hold back his irritation and half scolded, half asked Damien, "You got something wrong with your head?" He asked one thing, but Damien answered innocently another, "I don't have a mom." Realizing he'd misspoke, Asta felt guilty and thought, "Oh, my bad." But outwardly he stayed tough and declared firmly, "Well, I don't have a dad either, so we're even. Now let's part ways here, got it?" Actually, he was cautious and thought, best not get involved with a bomb like that. Cut ties early before things get messy, eh? Even so, Damien stood there, neither speaking nor leaving, just staring at him. Asta lost patience and asked, "You're not going?" Damien said bluntly, "I'll go with you." Asta thought irritably, should I just smack him? But he didn't do anything, just snapped, "Move aside." Suddenly Damien reached out, as if to touch him, and asked concernedly, "Hey, doesn't that hurt?" Then he brightened excitedly, "I'll heal it." At the same time, Damien performed magic. Looking at the boy's magic circle, Asta asked blankly, "What is this?" Damien saw his confusion and smiled as he replied, "Magic." Asta already had an answer in his mind, but this only made him even more bewildered. No, this isn't just ordinary healing magic. The healing light, a forbidden secret art of the Blander family, the clan that Declan once crushed. His memories dimly recalled the tale. Deep inside he stayed on high alert, warning himself, "My instincts are screaming this filthy, dangerous thing that a cleaner like me always avoids is now clinging to me tight." Thinking that, he unconsciously stared hard at Damien. At that moment his head was flooded with questions that needed answers. But why is a Blander child here in the gray zone at this time? Blander should still be at the height of its power right now. Without thinking too long, he hurriedly called out, "Damien, Damien, huh?" Hearing his name called, Damien let out a surprised sound. Then he beamed brightly and asked back, "You called me?" Asta froze, stunned, and unconsciously cursed under his breath. Damn it. Looking clearly at Damien's heterochromatic eyes, he suddenly snapped awake and pieced several things together. I remember now, a person with Blander blood has those strange eyes. The monster of the Blander family. Just thinking it made his mind replay a shocking scene. Sea of flames, corpses everywhere, and the chilling laughter of Damien when he turned dark, the mad butcher who couldn't be killed no matter how many times he tried. But right now Damien was an adorable, innocent kid smiling happily and exclaiming in wonder, "Oh, ants." He was intently counting them one by one, 1, 2, seeing the scene before him combined with memories from his past life. Asta couldn't believe it and stood frozen in shock thinking, "You've got to be kidding me." A group of people in black cloaks rushed toward the light. Back when he was still a cleaner before regressing, he had once been dispatched to the Blander family on Declan's orders. His past self grumbled irritably, "Damn it, if it's Blander business, handle it yourselves. Why drag us in?" The person beside him replied, "Well, we don't really understand the higher-up schemes either." Another one suddenly jumped closer and recounted, "I heard in the soft territory there's a monster. Rumor has it dozens of people have died." He frowned and guessed, "Monster like an ogre or something." But then his face showed fear, and then I saw it. Something was torn in half right in front of them. Not an ogre. That thing stood shirtless holding two halves in its hands. It was a human ripping another human apart barehanded. The monster wore a crazed expression fighting nonstop while endlessly using Soft's exclusive healing magic, laughing and killing in pure madness. It trampled over hundreds of bodies, the monster of Blander, the mad butcher who couldn't be killed. The monster with golden and red eyes and that ever-present insane smile on its lips, Damien von Blander. Back in the present, Damien was squatting and smiling like a flower. He began counting under Asta's judging gaze, 1, 2. Asta doubted himself inwardly, for real. He stared at Damien with a mountain of questions. Why is the legitimate son of Blander, the only son of the family head, living in a dump like this? Right then the boy suddenly stood up and shouted, "Food! Asta instinctively blurted." Damien smiled brightly and continued, "Let's eat. My mom said if you want to be healthy, you have to eat properly. Sickness comes from not eating." Asta inwardly agreed, he's right. He brushed off his pants and stood up. Though he didn't hit back verbally, it still hurt, and asked, "Yeah, do you have money?" Without any suspicion, the boy held out a pouch of gold coins. This. Asta suddenly slung an arm around his shoulders. Damien looked up curiously him. Asta gave a thumbs up enthusiastically. Let's be friends, okay? Damien blinked, huh? Suddenly, Asta shamelessly lifted his head and continued. I said friends, you understand? And friends share everything they have. Right after, Asta's eyes lit up as he pointed ahead. Let's go, my friend. Time to eat. Damien sparkled and echoed. Friend. Under the sunset sky, the boy suddenly asked, so what do you have? Asta answered casually. Me? I got a friend now, that sounds pretty cool. Night fell at a small inn tucked among the other houses. Asta opened his mouth and let out a loud burp. He rubbed his full belly and sighed in satisfaction. That meal was amazing. After washing my face, I feel refreshed too. Seeing Damien looking around curiously, Asta asked, what are you doing? Damien innocently replied, I didn't know the place we ate had rooms upstairs. I usually sleep on the street, didn't realize having a house was this convenient. Asta could only respond vaguely, yeah. But suddenly the boy planted both hands on the bed and exclaimed, that's right. Damien said seriously, I don't have a dad either. Asta processed it for a few seconds, then immediately denied, no, you do. The boy shot back, no, I don't. Asta didn't reply and just thought inwardly, don't turn this into a suffering contest. Thinking that, Asta quickly changed the subject. What about you? Do you have a mom? Damien looked around cluelessly. Where? Not here. Asta slapped his forehead helplessly. If she's not here, then she probably doesn't exist. That's a harsh way to think. All right, let me assess the situation first. Asta asked again, how long have you been here alone? The boy counted mentally and hesitated. Since I ran away from home, I've slept 10 times. Asta's expression darkened slightly. Ran away? Were you being chased? 10 sleeps, meaning 10 days. Damien innocently corrected. I also take naps a lot. Asta's head filled with more question marks. The boy smiled and held up 2 fingers. Twice a day, of course. I mean short naps. Anyway, total 10 sleeps. Asta's confusion only grew. He guessed helplessly. So about 3 or 4 days? Damien flopped onto the bed and complained, but I haven't slept properly since coming here. The ground's too hard. Asta suddenly looked up blankly. Then he turned a glance at the soft pillow behind him. Asta buried his face in the pillow and yelled, this kid is insane from birth. After venting, he sneaked a sideways glance. Anyway, while this kid's stuck in the gray zone, I can act as his temporary babysitter, and it wouldn't be bad to build connections with Blander in the process. Damien lay on his back, eyes closed, mumbling, this place is Asta calculated inwardly. Later, when facing Declan, this will be useful, and powerful families usually have lots of rare books. He suddenly recalled his miserable past image. Of course, first I need to handle something else. 57 grudges carved deep in my chest. Thinking that, Asta looked up and reminded, Damien, I'm heading out. Don't cause trouble. If you do, it'll be big trouble. Damien sat up at that. Are you practicing breathing? Asta answered mechanically. Yeah, that's right. When I'm done, you do it too. I'll wait. The boy happily replied. Okay, got it. Done with that, Asta slowly closed his eyes and felt it. In my previous life, I built my magic foundation with basic spells that cleaners were allowed, but the limits were obvious. Images of his past self dashing through the night appeared. So I sneaked into many noble families to steal magic. In the midnight sky, shattered glass and various spells scattered, nearly dying countless times, the magic I learned that way. Night body reinforcement techniques, spirit summoning, alchemy, a bunch of miscellaneous arts, but he suddenly remembered the figure of that cane-wielding man right before death. A cloaked figure standing amid thunderous clouds. I've encountered true destructive power, and because of that, Asta suddenly opened his eyes straight at the ceiling, his green eyes shining with determination. His lips parted slightly and pursed. The first magic I must learn is Declan's foundational ultimate technique, the root of Declan magic, capable of accepting all attributes of mana. Asta closed his eyes again and breathed evenly. I memorized it once to study it. Now I have the chance to use it for real, the breathing technique. Suddenly a fierce flame erupted on his left chest. Asta's eyes widened in pain. Too hot. It feels like lava rushing through my body. Damn it, what is this? He told himself inwardly. Focus. I have to circulate it. But Asta's eyes bulged again when he noticed something. On his hand now appeared a different flow of mana, impurities. Why are there these things? In the past, an old man once channeled mana into a young man. This is advanced magic, only passed down to pure-blooded members of noble families. A blue mana current coursed through Asta's body, forcing the mana through and burning away all impurities in his meridians. His entire body felt submerged in a lake of pure mana, mana purification. Asta jolted awake from the trance, drenched in sweat. breathing heavily as he sat up. How long has it been? Damien on the next bed was still sleeping soundly. Asta opened his eyes wide and looked at his hand. No, more importantly, no more impurities in my channels. The mana has been purified, purity even higher than my previous life, maybe even more. He frowned and looked up thoughtfully. Even so, Asta could imagine that man's figure towering many times larger than himself. Defeating Declan, even reborn 100 times, it might still be impossible. But he still clenched his fist confidently. But one thing is certain. Asta bared his teeth in a proud grin. My chances have increased. I'm a cleaner, a human who never gives up even with 0.01% hope. The next morning, a shocked cry rang out from the inn. Whoa, amazing! Damien stared in astonishment as he touched his hair. My hair turned brown. Estar glanced at him and thought inwardly. Good. The silver hair that's too conspicuous is hidden. Once we change clothes, Blander won't recognize him. He calculated silently. Now, only one last thing left. Right then, Damien asked cheerfully, so what do we do next, my friend? Estar's face froze as he stared at him, but then he turned and smiled, eyes sparkling with excitement. Estar spoke 3 short words, cause chaos. At the same time, elsewhere, someone stretched after last night's sleep. Spotty relaxed under the morning sun. Slept great. The weather's nice today, too. But he suddenly froze and stared straight ahead. Estar and Damien were slowly walking toward Spotty. The kid muttered, that brat. He started talking. Where the hell did you disappear to? Showing up now and looking like you bathed in a sewer. Spotty continued without restraint. Who's this kid? Looks rich, no matter how you see it. Before he finished, he took a punch straight to the stomach from Estar. As Spotty collapsed unconscious, Estar spoke. Looks like I found the right place because you're still crystal clear in my memory. Estar clenched his fist full of rage. First of all, 123 hits. You're definitely getting every single one. Right at that moment, 2 more gang members suddenly rushed out. What, Spotty? What's going on? In the blink of an eye, the entire gang had gathered fully. Someone broke in. Wait, no way. Isn't that little punk? Grinned excitedly, his face full of familiar faces. All these recognizable mugs. Terrifying. Both he and Damien wore strangely dark expressions as Estar muttered, Wonder how far I can go today. Damien suddenly piped up curiously. What are we playing, my friend? A powerful punch slammed straight into a young man's face, dislocating his jaw and sending him reeling backward. Without stopping there, Estar followed up with a decisive blow to the gut of another who charged in, making him fly back and roll several times across the ground. Estar moved freely and mercilessly, swinging his fists without holding back against anyone. The whole crowd swarmed him like that, yet not a single one could touch him. Standing off to the side watching, Damien couldn't help but marvel in awe. Estar clenched his fist tighter, channeling mana into it, gripping hard, then unleashing a barrage of attacks. Damien's eyes sparkled with excitement. Awesome. While fighting, Estar turned and reminded him, Damien, back then they called this peak performance. The boy let out an, oh, and immediately copied the praise, super peak. Right then, one guy Estar knocked out rolled right up to Damien's feet. The boy quickly squatted down, placed his hand on the guy, and gently cast healing magic. It's okay. I'll heal you. After being treated, the guy regained some clarity and mumbled weakly, thanks, no mercy. He suddenly appeared beside him like a ghost, grabbed his collar, and asked, how many hits so far? Immediately after came a series of dry, sharp sounds, smack, crack, mixed with endless miserable screams. He beat them from morning until the sky turned to evening. Countless people collapsed one after another, yet Estar was still full of energy, swinging his fists. One guy tried to sneak away during the chaos, but got spotted. Estar immediately whacked a staff right across his, but with a loud crack. Then Estar slowly approached and asked, how many times did you get hits? The guy clutched his red butt and stammered, I forgot. Estar glanced back and called, hey friend. Damien ran over excitedly. My turn, my turn. Estar ordered casually like it was a song. Heal his hands. The young man despaired inwardly. Stop already. Estar cracked his knuckles, smirking wickedly. Listen carefully, you're in the role of the punching bag, got it? Damien happily supported. Heal hands, heal hands. The soon-to-be pummeled guy screamed internally. Stop, you demons. I only know numbers up to 2 digits. Now it was night. A full moon hung high in the sky, casting faint silver light over every rooftop. Down below, Estar had finished today's revenge work. He smiled contentedly. Thanks for today. The beaten gang lined up straight and replied in unison. Thank you so much. Estar nodded proudly. Your mana distribution is looking good now. I'm proud. Damien clapped enthusiastically and promised. All done. Let's play again tomorrow. Estar felt exhilarated inside. I'm proud, too. I landed over 100 hits per person, more than 1,000 total. Even for me, a veteran cleaner who's never fought on mountains or in the air, this was a fresh challenge. Just then, a faint, hesitant sound pulled him out his thoughts. A bruised and purple-faced young man rubbed his hands together, bowed slightly, and spoke softly. Can I go now? I think that's enough. Estar gave a small nod. Yeah, go ahead. The guy twitched his lips in a forced smile. Actually, this is my house. Estar drew out the word mockingly. So you want us to scram? Estar's grip tightened on the guy's collar, his face showing clear annoyance as he growled each word. That's really awkward, huh? The young man panicked and hurriedly explained, No, we'll leave right away. Without wasting another second, they scurried off quickly. Estar watched them go with his eyes. This isn't personal grudges. Suddenly sensing something, he turned his head slightly. This is really awkward. Damien was still innocently waving goodbye enthusiastically, while Estar looked toward the end of the alley. Someone's there. In that spot, a figure with a fierce aura landed, and that person was approaching. Estar narrowed his eyes and analyzed. Fast but stealthy, distinct feeling like a cleaner. Estar's gaze turned tense toward the person beside him. In his mind flashed the guess, probably a pursuer, and the target is Damien. I was careful, yet they still tracked the trail. Hard to believe Blander found him first. Estar closed his eyes and tried channeling the little mana left in his palm. With this much mana, even one spell is hard. Close combat would be even worse. Not good. He opened his eyes, face focused, and gazed deep. But who do you think I am? His hands moved slowly, gathering mana. Even back when I was just a cleaner, I never had mana to spare, not once. Situations like this, I faced them 100 times. Nothing new. At his fingertips, a magic circle appeared, mana condensing, compressing tighter and tighter. The spell solidified into a small round orb. This much is enough. Without a second's delay, Estar spun around. He dropped to one knee in a shooting stance, aimed forward where a figure was rushing toward him. This is my only chance. But then, something unexpected happened. The approaching figure suddenly dropped to their knees. Estar stared wide-eyed, in confusion like a goldfish, utterly baffled. The man slid forward on his knees, wailing desperately. Oh heavens, young master. Hearing that familiar voice, Damien froze. Alfred. The man hugged the boy and cried bitterly. Do you know how long I've been searching for you, where you went, what you did? This poor butler has been worried sick, unable to eat or sleep. Damien pushed Alfredo's head away in disgust. Let go. I'm not going back. The man wailed again. Oh heavens and earth, young master, just kill me instead. The butler's voice cried out in misery. Heavens, running away from home. How could you do this? Estar behind them watched with a disgusted curl of his lip. A moment later, Alfredo grabbed the pouting Damien, tucked him tightly under his arm, and stood up. Please forgive me for making such a commotion in front of an honored guest. He regained his refined demeanor and introduced himself. I am Alfredo, butler of the Blander family. Hasta rabia politali is imasta. Alfredo smiled warmly and extended a hand toward him. It seems young Master Damien is quite fond of you. If you don't mind, would you like to come back to the family with us? Hearing that, Estar swallowed hard, his mind suddenly in turmoil. Going to the Blander house, he began imagining all sorts of things. The basic rule of prestigious families is to avoid anything dirty and steer clear of anything too noble. I can't guess what they're scheming. Finally, Estar smirked, but whatever, it's fine. I already planned to approach the Blander family anyway. Because his goal had been set long ago, luckily, Blander territory lies right on the route to the city, where Xenian Academy is located, considered the pinnacle of Eastern education. Its library is also known as the greatest in the East. Since I plan to build the best library, stopping by to check it out isn't a bad idea. Thinking that, Estar gave a small nod. Yes, I understand. Thank you for your help. Alfredo turned and walked ahead. Then, I'll prepare the carriage. Please wait a moment. Estar picked up his coat and pondered. I've slightly veered off the library building path, but good things just keep coming. Under the bright moonlight, he put his clothes back on. All right, let's see if Blander family food lives up to the hype. That night sky was truly beautiful. The full moon hung high, quietly draping everything in a soft silver glow. After a smooth ride, the carriage stopped in front of a grand estate. We've arrived. This is the Blander family mansion. Estar stepped down calmly from the carriage, walking with relaxed, yet steady strides. He lifted his head to look at the building before him. First time coming here officially, the Blander family mansion. At the entrance, a long line of people stood neatly in respectful formation. Alfredo bowed slightly and gestured inside. It's late. Please rest comfortably. Lancy, I'm counting on you. The maid behind him nodded. Yes. She stepped forward, glaring down. This way, please, young Master Damien. The boy broke into a sweat, but forced a smile. Lancy. The door closed along with Damien's scream. I messed up, Lancy. The mansion at night was wrapped in silence. Most rooms had their lights out. In the dim corridor, only faint moonlight slipped through the windows and spilled across the stone floor as Alfredo walked alone in one direction. Reaching a door, he knocked lightly a few times. A voice from inside called, "Come in." Alfredo turned the knob gently, pushed the door open, and slowly entered. In a majestic, classical room, a woman's voice rang out. Damien. He bowed and reported, "The boy from Gray-White District Number 7, I just brought him back." The chandelier glowed brightly. After that statement, the air suddenly fell into an eerie silence. A sudden explosion flew straight toward Alfredo's face, but he remained perfectly still, unmoving. The woman raised her hand, the magic circle still active. Gray-White District Number 7, you say? She seemed to erupt in fury, bombarding him with questions. Is Damien okay? Was he hurt? If even a single hair on my son is damaged, Alfredo spoke calmly to soothe her. Madam, please calm down and let me explain first. After hearing the full story, the woman finally settled down and sat back in her chair. I see. She withdrew her magic and sighed in relief. That's truly reassuring. Alfredo stood calmly amid the mess. Yes, truly reassuring. He thought inwardly. Good for Madame and good for whoever might have touched the young master. This woman was Damien's mother, Madame Gamma, once called the Blood Witch. Her rage was something no one could stop. It was only natural. No mother could stay calm when it came to her own child. A smile bloomed on her face. At least the outcome was fortunate. Anyway, you've worked hard. Alfredo bowed respectfully. It was nothing. That's my duty. However, there is one slightly unusual thing. Madame Gamma narrowed her eyes. Unusual? She probed. You mean about the friend young master made this time? Asta, right? Is there something about that friend? Alfredo's eyes narrowed dangerously as he recounted. He detected my presence even before I appeared. He was already prepared to counterattack. He briefly recalled the spell Asta had prepared. The mana condensed into a swirling light around his palm. When he looked closely at its shape, Alfredo confirmed. And when we faced each other, what that kid held in his hand was a mana bullet. Madame Gamma rubbed her chin in approval. Undeniable, that's astonishing talent. A child capable of that coming from the Gray-White District. Suddenly, Alfredo moved his lips, his gaze resolute. That's precisely why, madam. His face turned grave. I humbly make one request. The next morning, morning sunlight poured down, highlighting the grandeur and majesty of the entire estate. Alfredo, glowing with enthusiasm, proposed brightly. Hey, how about becoming the successor? Asta, who had just opened his eyes and heard the invitation, was left utterly speechless. Frozen for several seconds. Alfredo was beaming inside, like a flower in bloom. Surprise, huh? But no way that kid would refuse. A butler from a prestigious family, like me personally offering a life-changing opportunity for a stray kid. Glory, wealth, fame. But Asta's calm reply made him freeze. No. Alfredo was completely shocked, stunned. What? He stared at Asta, who was casually picking his ear with a look of existential doubt. What did you just say, kid? Did I hear wrong? Damien poked his head in, eyes wide with curiosity. Damn it. What the hell is damn it? Thank you so much for nominating me as the butler successor of the family, but I think I prefer my current life. He bowed slightly while speaking, at the same time covering Damien's mouth. No talking. He shot a glance. Once again, I'm truly grateful. He still couldn't shake his curiosity, but eventually understood. Why refuse? I see. He looked at the two young men and thought inwardly. Born in the gray zone, penniless from childhood, self-taught magic through talent. Because of covering Damien's mouth, the two communicated with glances. Asta shot Damien a cold look downward. I didn't say damn it. The boy glared back resentfully, insisting. You did. Watching them, Alfredo's mind raced. That must be why you're so arrogant. I understand. I was once a nameless wild kid who didn't know limits, either. At this point, he spoke gently. But kid, the world is vast. Asta replied bluntly. I know it's not small. Seeing Asta's fearless expression, he gradually lost patience. Right now, you might feel like you can do anything, reach the whole world. Contrary to his rising emotions, Asta stayed calm and spoke as economically as possible. Not exactly. Though veins bulged on his forehead and his head felt like it was on fire, he still held back. Have patience. You need to learn patience. He tried to stay as calm as possible, putting on a friendly face to illustrate and scare Asta into backing down. Have you ever heard of goblins living in mountain crevices? That's your current situation. born and raised in a crevice, completely unaware of how terrifying the outside world is. This seemed to have quite an impact as Asta scratched his ear this time, his face calmer than ever. I think I'm more like the Dragon King in the sky. A sharp cracking sound cut through the air. A powerful stomp caved in the ground. This brat knows nothing. His body gradually grew enormous. Then I, a butler, will personally show you. His face twisted in anger like someone had stolen his rice ledger, trying to intimidate with authority. How vast and terrifying this world truly is. Sunlight gradually shone into the grand castle. One big, one small, both with stone-cold faces, strode boldly into the castle. Everyone in the palace who heard the strange noise outside immediately turned. Instantly, without needing prompting, they lined up neatly and bowed in unison. Greetings, great butler. As if proving his authority here, he put on a dignified air. What do you think, kid? All of them are around your age, but they're official geniuses of the Blander family. You must feel it somewhat by now. Even after going this far, all he got was Asta's indifference and nonchalance. At times like this, caution flickered in Asta's thoughts. The Blander family isn't a joke. Asta glanced over the young people standing before him and inwardly assessed. Hard to believe they're just teenagers. Their auras may be light, but they blanket the entire room. But Asta gave a faint smile, as if he'd seen through their act. Looking into their eyes, they're all just a bunch of goblins. He wasn't wrong. Their eyes held no goodwill whatsoever. Asta spoke to him. Yeah, I do feel something. Hearing that, Alfredo lit up like he'd struck gold and eagerly asked, So you'll accept my offer? Getting carried away, he praised Asta to the skies. If you succeed me, you'll shine like them. No, brighter than anyone. Suddenly, Asta turned away sharply and said bluntly, pouring cold water on him, I hate lights. Hearing that, Alfredo's mouth went stiff. Kid, how could you? An arm suddenly rose. Great butler. A young man with a mole under his eye stepped forward with a slight smirk. He asked, and in turn, you have something to say? He confidently stated his opinion. If that kid really felt something, he wouldn't have refused the invitation. But with how bluntly he rejected it, I think he hasn't felt enough yet. Asta looked at him without changing expression. If permitted, I'd like to give him an experience. He asked back, you want to spar? He shrugged with a smug look. Not exactly a duel. Just let him taste a bit of what mana is. He looked him up and down, inwardly assessing. Arrogant, but not bad. Then he turned with an amused expression and said to Asta, Kid, what do you think? A simple match against that guy. Asta gradually sank into his own thoughts. I know. They see me as a thorn in their side. In their eyes, outwardly smiling and friendly, but deep inside, all demons in human skin. Some lucky beggar who crawled out of nowhere. That's probably what they think. Asta pointed forward and asked him, Can I choose my opponent? Go ahead and try. Hearing that, he decisively pointed at the one who suggested the game. You. Thinking one was enough, he kept pointing at more, making even Alfredo beside him panic. You too, and you as well. I'll fight all five at once. Just hearing those three words made the initial arrogance and smugness on their faces drop by half, replaced by shock mixed with 3 question marks. Asta flicked his fingers provocatively, his eyes and voice colder than ever. Scared? Then die. Though just a bystander witnessing that aura made Alfredo break into a cold sweat and feel a twinge of caution. His mouth slowly opened. Then he burst into delighted laughter. Yes, that's exactly the spirit a successor needs. Though very satisfied with that demeanor, for safety, he still turned to remind Asta. Kid, are you willing to take responsibility for those words? A statement like that is practically insulting the Blander family. Asta smiled and said, I'll take responsibility. Hearing that confirmation, he quickly moved to start the match. Good, then let's begin. 1 minute. If you last 1 minute, I'll give you a gift. If not, you'll take responsibility. Hearing the rules, Asta immediately understood his intention. Responsibility here probably means inheriting the butler position. This old man clearly trying to drag me in. Fine, I'll play. After brief preparation, right now on the arena, he stood alone against the other 5. Around them, more and more people gathered. Someone approached Alfredo and said, But great butler, isn't this dangerous? He wasn't worried. In fact, he was resolute. That's exactly why it has value. His stubbornness needs to be shattered before he can grow. The person beside him looked up in surprise. Suddenly, the boy gritted his teeth and turned away, eyes tightly shut as he thought inwardly. Not good. His eyes are already rolled back. If I injure the young master's guest, my career as a trainer is over. Unexpectedly opening his eyes, he saw Damien and Lance were also there. Seeing that, he bowed and whispered to Damien, Young master, your friend is in real danger. Please stop the great butler. thinking this might salvage the situation, but hearing that made Damien's eyes sparkle brightly, his heart blooming. Really? Even I'm surprised. Seeing that, he slapped his forehead helplessly. Oh heavens, Lance beside him reminded. If the young master gets involved, Madame Gamma will explode and drag him away. So he crossed his arms, pouted, and turned away, cursing. Damn it, seeing it had been too long without the match starting. He turned and gently urged. Trainer, what are you waiting for? Begin. Though reluctant, he had no choice but to comply. Yes, understood. At that moment, Damien was also getting the usual lecture from Lance. The trainer walked away helplessly with silent tears streaming down. Off track, off track. I did my best. The trainer's helpless expression caught Lance's attention. Suddenly, she left, leaving Damien with one sentence. I'll be right back. Don't interfere. As soon as she was gone, her pitiful, guilty face from before was replaced by a sly one. All right. The trainer stood between both sides and explained the rules. Let me explain the match rules. It will be turn-based. Not satisfied, he interrupted from outside. No, make it a free-for-all. Unable to do anything, the trainer accepted. As you wish. Regaining his most neutral expression, the trainer announced. The format is a free-for-all. The match continues until one side surrenders. However, the trainer may stop the match at any time. Remember that. Rules explained. Asta's eyes looked at his opponents with utmost seriousness, ready for the upcoming battle. The five on the other side were just as tense. Looking at him, he gritted his teeth, face full of disgust. Filthy nameless beggar, the young master and butler might pity you, but who do you think you are? I'll crush you and drag your true face out for everyone to see. The trainer's sharp command rang out. Then begin. The moment the trainer finished, he was immediately hit with a strike to the gut, tears and spit flying everywhere. He suddenly clutched his eyes, mouth gaping in agony. He glanced at his teammates behind him. The remaining four were also writhing on the floor in pain, not faring much better than him. He looked at the person in front of him, his face now showing some fear. The demeanor remained the same, eyes and smile unchanged. Looks like I should teach you a few things myself. First, don't underestimate the weak. What he noticed most now was the magic on Asta's hand. He panicked. Magic mana bullet. That's the most basic mana control, consumes a ton of energy, useless in real combat. Asta's cold voice rang out again. Second, don't judge others so lightly. With a flick of his hand, the magic immediately shot toward the five of them. It struck them directly in the head, making everyone cry out in pain. His eyes now filled with utter terror. Third, Asta rushed straight at him, eyes wide as he pressed his face close, fist parallel. The world is vast and bitter. That left him frozen in place. With those words, a decisive, powerful punch slammed into his face, sending him flying far. After finishing, he kindly reminded, from now on, I'll pour all these experiences into you. Learn properly. After receiving Asta's full course, now looking from top to bottom, he was utterly wrecked, one hand clutching his face, screaming, You lunatic, this isn't magic. It is. Then Asta took a step back with one foot for momentum. He unleashed another merciless strike, knocking out his front teeth. This is physical magic. The trainer's eyes bulged wide, his mouth hanging open in pure shock. Everyone else watching from the sidelines shared the exact same stunned expression without needing to coordinate. On the arena, the battle was intensely tense for Asta. His arms and legs moved non-stop without a moment's rest. Hands grabbing collars to yank one guy close while feet stomped loudly into another, all while wearing a sly, wicked grin. Alfredo was genuinely surprised by his abilities and thought inwardly, those are mana bullets. He threw 4 or 5. Judging by the power, they must have been compressed at least 4 times each. He imagined the scenario if one of those mana bullets had actually hit. If it had landed just now. Alfredo was still lost in his thoughts, truly innate mana control talent, and not just that. Suddenly, the trainer dashed past him with a face glowing like he'd struck gold. Picturing the scene of this demon single-handedly beating the 5 little demons to a pulp, he wondered, why is he so ridiculously good at punching and kicking? Unexpectedly, a voice called out sharply, startling him. Alfredo. He hurriedly turned toward the source of the shout. Approaching him was Lancy, and a few steps ahead of her stood Madame Gamo. Surprised, he raised his voice slightly. Madame Gamo, looking toward the doorway and seeing Alfredo speaking privately with Madame Gamo, someone thought inwardly, Madame Gamo has arrived. Like spotting a life raft, the trainer's face crumpled with 2 silent streams of tears rolling down as he nodded at Lancy. Madame Gamo is here to save us. She nodded back reassuringly to calm the trainer. Madame Gamo spoke in an extremely serious tone. What exactly is going on here? Not daring to be discourteous, he bowed and stammered, I only intended a simple test. She glanced over and asked again, a test? Seeing the battlefield Asta had created, and even catching him grabbing someone by the collar, she said, you call this a test? While focused on something, he suddenly heard the familiar, authoritative voice called Damien and jolted guiltily. Finally, she ordered, first, gather the trainees and have them withdraw. He placed one hand on his chest and bowed in agreement. Toward Damien, she also commanded, Damien, go back to your room first. Dropping the mischievous expression from earlier, he now scratched his head in front of his mother, putting on his innocent, blameless face. Asta wasn't exempt either, she said. You too, Asta, return to your room. She walked over and stood in front of the trainer. Trainer Runfit. He bowed, sweat already beading on his face. Runfit spoke up. Yes, Madame Gamo, I did my best. For words came from her. You're fired. That left him stunned and frozen. What? In the Grand Palace, Madame Gamo's voice rang out. Alfredo. Yes, madam. Holding her teacup, she spoke to the butler. I understand your intentions, but this time you've gone too far. Without hesitation, he bowed earnestly. I apologize, madam. I accept any punishment. She set her teacup down. However, she asked, I heard Asta had a practice match with the trainees. Did Damien help him? He answered calmly, no, he fought alone. It's just that. He paused at the crucial point, prompting her to press. Just that. Called with immense pride and satisfaction. He's incredibly skilled at fighting. Suddenly remembering something, he added, oh, right. Regarding the mana bullet I mentioned earlier, he used it in today's practice match, too. His voice lowered, even more dangerous, but he compressed it 4 or 5 times. That amplified its power terrifyingly, which proves, following his words, she gradually deduced. He has exceptional mana control. Though I didn't see it myself, just one mana bullet was enough to defeat all 5 trainees. She recalled the scene, Asta standing tall amid the fallen, each person sprawled in a corner writhing in pain. She thought, with just one bullet, even for high-level mages, handling pure mana to that degree is extremely difficult. She continued asking, and about the succession offer? He answered frankly, he refused outright. Hearing the reply, she lifted her teacup and said to him, I understand. After a sip, she thought, perhaps I need to reevaluate Asta and consider things more carefully. Then she told the butler, call Asta here. A short while later, when the door opened, he strode in boldly. On the sofa, Damien was puffing his cheeks and glaring while munching a pastry. Spotting him, he immediately raised a hand in greeting. Beside him, Madame Gamo smiled warmly and said, Asta, you're here. Come sit. Sitting down, he didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. I heard you summon me. Yes. But first, she took out a box and pushed it toward him. He looked at the box. This is, I heard Alfredo promised you a gift. He tried to recall the information. That Asta remembered before entering the match. Alfredo had said, if you last 1 minute, I'll give you a gift. But what surprised him was, I didn't expect it to come this fast and prepared personally by Madame Gamo. She maintained her friendly smile. You can open it. Taking the box, he slowly opened it. As soon as the lid lifted, a glow emanated from inside. Inside was a golden gem, leaving him stunned. High-grade item. Even in the Blander family, only trainees who join the top 5 mage divisions receive one. He glanced suspiciously at Madame Gamo. I'm not sure. Normally, kindness stops at a meal. If there's a gift, there must be some hidden intention. If it were a bet reward, a mid-grade one would make sense, but this is high-grade. She suddenly seemed to realize something. Stroking her son's head beside her, she said, you can accept it without worry. You helped Damien in the gray zone before, and this gift is also an apology for what happened today. Though she said that, he still asked skeptically, wait, if I take this, do I have to join Blander? Her expression remained extremely friendly. No, he continued probing, or is there poison in it? Her brows furrowed slightly, mouth twitching, but she restrained herself. No, he said, so you're saying there are absolutely no conditions attached? Correct, no conditions at all. Hearing that, he no longer hesitated and took it. Then I accept. He closed the box. Thank you. It's nothing. Damien reached for another pastry on the table. Looking at the item in the box, his eyes sparkled, mouth already watering. Nice. A lucky find. Before he could fully celebrate, she added, additionally. Now, she finally revealed her intention. I have a proposal for you, Asta. His face turned serious and cold again. I knew it. He stroked her son's head. Asta. With an extremely harmonious expression, she said, I'll arrange for you to enroll in the academy. Would you like to study alongside Damien? That made Damien, who had been ignoring things, suddenly look up at his mother. He asked curiously, academy? She explained, actually, Damien was supposed to enroll last year. She looked at her son with sad eyes. But he opposed it fiercely, so we postponed it to this year. I never expected him to run away completely. Damien kept munching his pastry nonchalantly, turning his face away like he wanted to ignore it. She proposed, so I'm asking you. Damien really likes you. The boy chimed in. As long as my friend comes along, I'm okay. He pondered and gradually figured out her intention. Makes sense. For Bianca, this was a major issue. She feared forcing Damien to enroll would make him run away again. He imagined Damien stubbornly refusing. No way, I'm not going. And there was no clear way to change his mind. It seemed this proposal wasn't bad for him either. Of course, this is a great opportunity too. The academy is a good place. In a world revolving around bloodlines and connections, academic ties carry significant value. He gritted his teeth. Sounds good, but it feels like walking straight into a collar around my neck. He said, I'll think about it. Understood. Let me know when you've decided. By the way, this is unrelated, but I'm a bit curious. He was quite surprised. Taking the chance, she asked, why did you refuse Alfredo's succession offer? He glanced toward the door behind him. With a mischievous smile, well, my knees are quite valuable too. His answer left her puzzled. What? Outside, Alfredo was pressing his ear against the door, trying to eavesdrop. At a certain mansion, as dawn just broke, Asta parted his lips and exhaled a cold breath. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, practicing magic. I get it. This is a domain treasure. Even though I only absorbed 10%, my mana increased this much. S suddenly opened his eyes and glanced downward. Is it because my physique has transformed into one bearing the fire mark? The hand resting on his thigh was enveloped in mana. Normally absorbing a domain causes depletion, but here there's absolutely none. It exceeds my expectations. S calmly looked toward the window. Anyway, the academy, I've thought about it for a while, but the answer was probably already set. Outside the window, the sky was gradually brightening. If I enroll in the academy, finding support will be much easier. It brings plenty of advantages, but yet he turned his head inside. It feels like stepping straight into a trap. Maybe I should take a walk. Thinking that, a short while later, S stepped out of the room and closed the door. Suddenly someone spoke up, making him look over. You're the one named Aster, right? The platinum-haired guy leaned against the wall, staring intently at EST. Meanwhile, he inwardly assessed, platinum hair only main bloodline has that like Damien. So he's a branch family member. Why is this family always so troublesome? A few minutes later, Est finally spoke indifferently. No. What? The platinum-haired guy jolted. You said no. He rubbed his chin in confusion. Ash-gray hair, eyes with a hint of irritation. It's all you, right? In an instant, his whole body tensed. A red cross mark appeared. Look at this guy. S suddenly pointed to his own head. Hair color can change depending on the light. Right after he put on an enchantingly charming expression. Look into these eyes. How would you call them irritating? The platinum-haired guy pursed his lips, eyeing Est appraisingly. But then he turned away. In my eyes, they looked gentler. Sorry for the misunderstanding. I'm leaving now. Right then Alfredo jumped out from somewhere shouting. Hey young man, no Aster. I came to clear up the misunderstanding. I couldn't talk to you properly last night, and I've been tossing and turning all night. He knelt on the ground, sobbing nonstop. Even as a butler, no need to kneel until your knees bleed. It's just a misunderstanding. S stared blankly down at Alfredo at his feet, then stiffly shifted his gaze toward the departing platinum-haired guy. He had stopped at some point and was now glaring at Est. Est clicked his tongue irritably. Damn it. Immediately after came the platinum-haired guy's shout. Those eyes, I knew it. Exactly the cursed eyes that make you kneel and die aren't something common. Est helplessly admitted, all right, you caught me. He pointed furiously at Est's face. Look at you daring to trick me and still acting so shameless. The platinum-haired guy gritted his teeth threateningly. I will. But right at that moment, he caught Alfredo's sharp blade-like gaze. The platinum-haired guy immediately shut up and irritably looked away. Finally, he turned stiffly and said through gritted teeth, I'll let you off today, but come to the magic tower later. I'll fix that attitude of yours. Fine. After he left, Alfredo asked gently, what happened? S closed his eyes and smiled in response. Nothing. S suddenly let out a mocking breath with a sneer. Actually, perfect timing. My mood isn't great right now. He watched the platinum-haired guys retreating back and thought inwardly, I'll deal with him later. Then Estate suddenly called out, head butler. He gave a light smile and probed, can I meet madam right now? Not long after when the sky had brightened more, still at that same mansion. Gamo was holding a pen over a blank sheet of paper. Welcome, Aster. She closed her eyes and smiled faintly. So you wanted to see me this early? Have you already decided? The moment Gamo looked up, Est immediately answered, yes, madam. He stood properly in front of her and continued, I will join the academy. Gamo couldn't help but widen her eyes in surprise at the answer. She smiled again to cover her earlier lapse. Truly unexpected. I didn't think you'd decide so quickly. S smiled toward her. Good, then we should prepare right away. Gamo didn't forget to instruct him. In the meantime, rest comfortably. Thank you for your concern, madam. Then S figure disappeared from the room, followed by the sound of the door closing. But shortly after, Alfredo peeked his head in through the slightly opened door. As soon as he entered, he spoke softly, Madam. Fortunately, he agreed. In the next second, Alfredo's whole body suddenly became excited. Just as expected, that's the spirit of youth, passion, the fire burning in those eyes. I knew it. At that moment, Gamo watched him perform with dead fish eyes. Alfredo suddenly pointed with shining eyes. The first semester is fine. I'll cover the costs. But what about the second semester? He imagined the tuition bill and Est's anxious face reading it. A wanderer from the black-white zone. How could he afford that enormous tuition? He'll feel uneasy. Why? Because he'll want to learn more. In Alfredo's fantasy, he would extend a hand toward him, and at that very moment Alfredo would appear with angel wings and a pile of gold coins. A saving hand will appear. No one else but my sponsorship, Alfred. At this point, Gamo finally couldn't take it anymore and spoke. Alfred, you're being too noisy. Alfredo Yoltif. Sorry, I got too excited. It's almost mealtime. I'll head to the kitchen first. Gamo silently watched him leave and close the door. She helplessly closed her eyes and sighed. I understand why Alfred is so excited. He's been rejected so many times. Now he finally has a chance. But Gamo suddenly opened her eyes, revealing a sharp, icy gaze. She thought inwardly. In that sense, this academy proposal is nothing more than a crude ploy. But the reason Alfred is so confident. Gamo couldn't help shaking her head. Perhaps because he himself was once deceived by the previous butler in a similar way. Meanwhile, Alfredo was happily skipping down the hallway on the other side. Alfred, poor guy. On S side, he was leisurely walking down the stairs. Suddenly, Estate lifted his head and looked ahead. Before him stood a towering spire. This is the magic tower that Branch family guy is here. Thinking that, S cautiously stepped inside the tower. Suddenly, someone in a full cloak appeared and asked, What are you here for? He hesitated without answering, immediately thinking inwardly, right, I don't even know his name. Then Estate could only use gestures and words to describe the platinum-haired guy's appearance. The cloaked person understood and extended a hand. Perfect timing. I've been waiting for you. This way, please. He led the way while yawning widely. Reaching a door, he stopped and said, You can enter from here. Before leaving, the cloaked person remember to bow when opening the door. But Estate slowly pushed the door and stepped into the pitch-dark room. A cloud of papers and fine dust hit his face in an instant. So that's what he meant by bowing. S couldn't help coughing violently, but someone suddenly spoke. You're Aster. The person holding a candle slowly stepped out. Pleased to meet you. Under the candlelight, Henzi's eerie smile appeared. Bad feeling already. You're here for my little brother, right? S was confused. Huh, little brother? He thought inwardly. This guy is his older brother. On a certain evening in his previous life, the main character knelt on one knee in a high place. If there's one thing I learned from infiltrating magic research institutes as a cleaner, he coldly looked down below. Where he was looking was the inner courtyard of some building. That's the characteristic of magic researchers. Tables piled with papers, exhausted people collectively called pen pushers. One young man clutched his thinning hair in horror. First stage, thinning hair from constantly pulling it out until it stops growing. He rubbed his chin and calculated inwardly. Divided into stages. One person wore a hooded cloak, stage 1 denial, covering the head with a hood. Another revealed a bald patch, stage 2 giving up, exposing it. And one more with a completely bald head, stage 3 shaving off whatever's left. Finally, the one frantically casting all kinds of spells. And the final stage, stage 4, researching to turn the impossible into possible. Hair, growth magic. No one has succeeded. Back to the present. Est evaluated Henzi in front of him. But this guy is different. Meanwhile, he calmly poured tea and said leisurely, First, let me apologize. Henzi slowly recounted, he's the late-born youngest in the family, spoiled too much. But I never expected him to be rude and insolent to a guest. Est stared blankly and listened to every word. Henzi maintained a gentle smile, while Est thought inwardly, he's really thick-haired and young too. Est suddenly spoke, You probably work at a magic research institute. He admitted without hesitation, correct. Currently, I'm the vice director. Please enjoy some tea. He lifted the teacup and took a sip. Vice director at this age. In a noble family like Blander, they wouldn't appoint someone to that position based solely on bloodline. That means his strength is truly worthy. Henzi smiled and suddenly noticed Est's expression. He closed his eyes profoundly and said, Aster, you're truly unusual. You don't seem like someone from the gray zone at all. S could only give an awkward laugh. Probably. But inwardly he thought, damn it, if he'd come in wary, it'd be easier to handle. But he's smiling so kindly like that. S looked at Henzi drinking tea and sighed inwardly. His personality matches mine. He suddenly spoke. You've been invited to enroll in Zinnian Academy, right? Congratulations. Est forced a casual smile in response. Henzi continued, it'll be a great opportunity, lots to learn. Actually, I'm also a Zinnian alumnus, class of 145. Est heard that and thought, suddenly pulling the alumni card like this. He scratched his head and laughed sheepishly. Sorry, I got carried away hearing about you, enrolling in Zinnian. Anyway, let's get to the point. Elle lucht besold. The main issue. Henzi set down his teacup and continued. Before that, there's one thing I want to confirm. He smiled coldly and looked straight at EST. Are you willing to risk your life for a friend? Est furrowed his brows in confusion. What? Henzi suddenly summoned a book with magic. The fate of the Blander family hangs by a thread. Are you willing to sacrifice your life? He placed it before Est's surprised eyes. Est inwardly exclaimed, It was a thick book wrapped in the glow of mana. The core secret ultimate technique of the Blander family, the holy scripture of radiant healing. At the same time, in a certain greenhouse filled with flowers, Gamo quietly trimmed the blooming flower clusters. Suddenly, the hand holding the shears paused mid-air. Gamo lifted her head to look up, then let out a soft sigh. She thought inwardly, Damien's enrollment, something that once gave me headaches, has finally been handled smoothly without any incidents. At least one worry is gone. Outside in the blue sky, a flock of birds soared freely. Aster, that child is a true friend. Gamo suddenly recalled Asta's earlier image. Not bad talent and good character. According to Alfredo, he's sometimes reckless, bold, but that's normal at his age. She closed her eyes and smiled gently. What I like.